Hi, this is Christian Taylor. You are listening to Documentary First. I'm here with Michelle Coupey.
Hello, everyone.
We are here in Michelle's house, actually. This is a, sort of off the cuff recording. I do not have Jason or Josh here, so it's not really typically like we usually record our podcast, but at least we have one, which is pretty amazing. I am still here in Normandy, France, and we are regrouping, resting. We still have some meetings that we have to do for the Documentary First new screening that with the Carentan project. So Michelle and I were talking about how we were just trying to review what's happened since the last podcast. There's been a lot of water under the bridge.
And Christian, you've been on the run for since the beginning of May, basically, when we last met in Reims, and you did Reims.
In Reims.
With Danny and Flo. And so obviously you've updated the people about up until your leave when you were in Georgia getting ready to come over here. So
yeah, that feels like a whole lifetime ago. I feel like we lived a year in about 2 weeks. It's only been 2 weeks since I last did a podcast. So the last podcast you heard, I was leaving for France, and we were on a chartered Delta flight with 29 World War II veterans, employees and veterans from Delta, Michelin, and Best Defense Foundation. And then we took off. And I just want to say a little bit about that.
That had to be an amazing
it was really surreal. Just because I'd never done anything like this before. I didn't know what to expect. And I was blown away with the level of professionalism that I did see from the Best Defense Foundation as they were caring for the veterans that they were taking. All of these veterans were 97, 98, 99, 100.
Right.
There was one that was like 103, I think.
It's possible.
Crazy.
Amazing.
And so they really took care of them. They had doctors around all the time. They were just completely attentive. Every veteran had a staff member or two helping them. And when we got to the airport in Atlanta, there was a huge reception from employees and all sorts of people that are watching as all of the veterans came down to the gate. And when we got to the gate, one of the most exciting things, I don't know if you saw this, Michelle, but typically when you go to a gate, it'll say where you're flying to.
Oh, yes.
Right. So when we checked in, it basically just said Normandy.
Oh.
And so it was just super cool because typically you fly to Charles de Gaulle.
Right.
And how long is it? I mean, you've done that run so many times.
Yeah. I mean, that's so from Atlanta, gosh, yeah, that's going to be like a 7 to 8 hour, depending on which direction you go. So that's a long flight. And Christian, I think I heard that it was like the first ever flight directly from the U.S. to Normandy.
Well, I did hear from Tulay van Manen, who works on our Dutch Night. Our Dutch Night. You know who Dutch Night is? Dutch Night is a boy that I had a crush on in first grade. Where that came from, I have no idea.
Hi, Dutch, if you're listening.
I've never forgotten about you, obviously. No, the brave Dutch. Anyway, she basically said that flights do fly into Caen.
Right. But yeah, so, but not directly from the US. So that's the big difference.
Okay. Yeah. So that was amazing. Certainly never at Deauville, because Deauville is a very small airport, very regional airport. So there was a lot of negotiation that had to happen, but it's beautiful for the veterans because typically, I mean, tell me what happens when the veterans fly over from the US. How grueling is that for them?
Right. So typically, they basically come on a flight from the US to France, and depending where they are in the US, I mean, it can be from the West Coast, and that's a really long flight. And then the difference is what makes it huge is that they've had a long flight, but they arrive in Paris, and so then there's a almost 4 hour drive to get to Normandy. So that's really hard on those guys and gals. So this flight really changed it for them to make it much more easier, that they didn't have that long drive after such a long flight.
Yeah, yeah. Danny and Flo were just so happy to be with all of these veterans. The veterans, of course, were all in first class. It was great to see them there. We were in the premier seats right behind them. So still lovely that they treated us so nicely. And then it was an overnight flight. So we boarded at 9. We had our little meal. So many people were watching The Girl Who Wore Freedom on the plane. That was very exciting to see. A lot of people on the plane had not ever seen the movie before. So it was great to have that captive audience and watch them watching the film. And then
what was the reception like when you arrived in Deauville?
Yeah, well, what was interesting is that on the plane, people started coming up and talking about how special the movie was and watching it over there. And I just have to say, the other thing that I was blown away by during the night was the Best Defense Foundation's care of the veterans over that night period of time. They were up all night long. The veterans had difficulty operating their seats, operating the television, things, figuring out their food and the tray tables. And beyond that, it's, how they're tired. How do they sleep? How are they feeling? Have they had their medication? Getting up and going to the bathroom. I mean, I just watched the Best Defense Foundation be so attentive to their physical needs. And I realized what a major job.
It was a huge responsibility, I think, on the part of Donnie Edwards and the Best Defense. I mean, that was to 29 veterans, I believe. That is, yes, that's a lot of responsibility. And they were obviously up to the
task.
Yes.
All of the veterans got into Normandy well and rested and ready for this big adventure. When we landed at Deauville, it was just all decked out. They had a huge greeting party there. We got water cannon salutes over the airplane as we drove in. And then there were just school children there who were singing, bands that were playing. The hangar was completely decorated. And when all the veterans came off, they announced them that they were there.
Really?
Yeah, they announced Danny when she walked down the thing as well. So, and then we went into the hangar and there were speeches by different people, and the ambassador to France from the US was there, and they had a nice little reception. So it was really beautiful. It was a great kickoff. It was what the town of Deauville did for these veterans. And that was on December 2nd. And from there, we drove straight to the Carentan to have our first screening.
I booked you a little tight there.
Yes, but it was great. I just want to give a shout out to Celine at the cinema in Carentan. She's an amazing person. You really did.
Yeah, she was very supportive and really walked Flavia and I through the process of what to do and how to do it. And she and the chain of movie theaters that she works for were just really great and very supportive.
Let's talk about that just for 1 second, because it sounds easy now. But it was not easy. There were several steps that you had to go through to make sure that we could show our film at that theater. Talk to me about what you had to do.
So in France, in order to show a film in a movie theater or in a public place where people are expected to pay, then you have to have a visa for it. And
that's a tax, right?
That's a tax, right? Because in France, so cinema is somewhat subsidized by, making movies, producing movies, and movie theaters are sort of subsidized by the French government. And so the National Cinema Association basically manages all that. And so a tax, so when a film is shown, a tax is paid into that association, which then helps support cinema throughout France. So you have to have a visa in order to show your film.
Okay. So what did you have to do to get us the visa?
So to get the visa, it's what they call a temporary visa, actually, because we don't have a French distributor. And so it makes it a little bit more complicated, but they do provide for a temporary one where you can do it for a certain amount of time, depending if it's a narrative or if it's a documentary. So with the documentary, you can get a visa for up to 100 showings.
Okay.
And so with that, there's, it doesn't really cost anything. Actually, I don't think they even charged us for it.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
No,
Well, that was good.
Bonus.
Yeah.
And so really that was fairly easy, just filling out this short form. You just have to say when you're going to be showing all the showings for the film, and then really the movie theater then takes care of the rest, which is nice too. So they put in the visa number, and then they will pay out that tax. And so in the movie theater here was very with Celine. So they in Noy Cine, which is a chain of movie theaters that she works for. And they then said, we'll split at 50-50 with whatever is left over after that tax is paid off.
Yeah, it was really, it was great. And it wasn't, I think the first screening was on the second was probably our best, wouldn't you say? Like our most well-attended.
Yeah.
And then we had some other screenings after that, but that was definitely the most well-attended. And then it sort of kicked off our week, our D-Day experience. The next morning on June 3rd, it was the Carentan Purple Heart Lane Day. So we spent so much time sort of on Purple Heart Lane waiting for the parachutes to drop.
How do you feel now that you've been to, so I mean, that was your very first event when you came with Hunter. How do you feel about that now that now you've been back a couple of times for Purple Heart?
It's interesting for you to ask me that, because this was a very unique experience this year. I really feel like there's something special when I go there to that activity. I don't know, for me, that's my D-Day in a weird way, because it just was where everything began for me. And this year, Jonah was with me.
That's right.
In uniform. And so Jonah had never been to Normandy during D-Day, and he was there, and that was his first D-Day thing as well.
Yeah.
So in a weird sense, it recreated that initial time for me in a unique way. And then this year, there was an added little bonus, which was I was there to be interviewed for The Girl Who Wore Freedom. So they have this like big trailer where they do a lot of announcing and presenting. So I was able to do a presentation, and then had a Q&A with Thomas Boisson.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then they were wanting to tell the story of the Battle of Carentan. And so they did it in French, and then I narrated it in English. So I felt really a part of this particular Purple Heart Lane ceremony this year. Tom Rice, who was our veteran in Grueling Glory, was also there.
Oh, he was.
And he came by and met Jonah. So I had pictures with Tom Rice and Jonah this year on Purple Heart Lane. So it was very special.
Yeah.
It was very special. It felt very much like the first one. So it was a great day. And then from there, as you know, you walk to the Cabbage Patch ceremony, which was the longest Cabbage Patch ceremony I've ever been at. It was extremely long.
Really?
Yep.
For just the speeches, or?
There were long speeches. I think they added music this year. The veterans were late. So the 29 veterans from the Best Defense Foundation had been at Mont Saint-Michel. And then, so that kind of drew everything out, because then they had to get them all seated. Anyway, it was a long day, but it was a beautiful ceremony in a way to remember those that had fallen there. And so that was very sweet. 2 guys got their Medal of Honor, French Legion of Honor there that day.
Have you ever explained that?
No, please.
What they do?
No, go right ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so the French, it's complete protocol. And so obviously it's the highest honor. So it's very official. And so a certain person, and I don't know all of the details, but a certain person has to be able to give it to the person who receives the Legion of Honor. And so but it's not like knighting like the English do. But
no, but I mean, they take it very seriously, because I started working with Dick Rung, who's a Wheaton resident. I just recently found him. He was coming over for D-Day, and I was hoping he could get his Medal of Honor for D-Day. And I thought, oh, this will be an easy process. But because of course the French want to give a veteran a Medal of Honor on D-Day, and I was able to prove that he had fought on French soil with all of his paperwork. And so you would think, bim, bang, boom, it should be done.
Yeah.
And my gut tells me that it probably wasn't done. I didn't see it. I didn't hear about it. And I think that's because it has to go through so many levels of French.
Right. The application part is very grueling.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the application has to be checked and approved. And but then when it is issued, then there's also another protocol to get through, the ceremony of actually giving the Legion of Honor to the individual. And so just a very serious,
serious and
special.
Yeah. So they gave 2 of those that day. And then, it was more D-Day activities after that. There was a Michelin dinner that we did with Michelin Best Defense Foundation and Delta
and where was that? In
Barneville
Barneville.
At a big, huge, the Normandy Institute. I think they have a big chateau there.
Yes.
And my favorite part about that evening was, and this actually happened at Deauville as well, you always have these ceremonies where everybody talks, all the important people talk, and then the ceremonies are over. Well, in Barneville, one of the veterans got up, who's really feisty and could walk and do his own things, and said, you know what? These ceremonies are all for the veterans, and veterans never get to talk. And he got up to the microphone and started talking and telling his experience. I was really glad he did that.
Yeah.
And once he did that, from going forward, other veterans were brave enough to do it. So at the Michelin dinner, I think there were 3 veterans who got up to tell their stories. Yeah, it was fantastic. So that was my favorite part about that, Michelin dinner. And then June 4th was the Angloville Ceremony. Why don't you tell a little bit about what happens there?
That would be great, but I've never been to.
No way. Really? Oh my goodness. Michelle Coupey.
I know, but there are so many.
Yeah, there's so many. Well, this one's so sweet. I'd like to go. Because this church is Angloville. It's a beautiful church in this tiny little village where Bob Wright and Kenneth Moore, 2 American medics of the 101st, commandeered the church, and they set up an aid station inside, and they would not let anyone in the aid station unless they left their weapons outside. So they treated German, American, and French people in this little church. And after a couple of days of treating everyone, 2 German snipers came down out of the bell tower and surrendered to the medics. So it's a powerful story, and there are still bloodstains on the pews, and the stained glass windows have been replaced with stained glass paratroopers and, statues of liberty and, I don't know, American flags and things like that. So it's a very special place to be. They do a Christian ceremony before they have the official service. So I attended that this year. So that was really special. And then it rained cats and dogs all the rest of the day.
And ropes fell.
Yes.
Ropes were falling.
What's the saying in French?
Yeah. Il tombe des cordes.
Il tombe des cordes. It happened it was raining ropes.
Yes.
That's what they say here. So we spent some time at the Normandy Victory Museum where we ran into your children, which was nice to see them. And then we we spent the time hanging out there until we figured out what we should do, which finally was decided we should go to the Stop Bar.
Stop Bar is the place.
Stop Bar in St. Mary Glees. If you've never been there, it is the place to go when the American military is in town, because that's where they hang out to drink, and then everybody goes to hang out with them.
A lot of singing,
a lot of singing,
a lot of drinking.
Yep. And so I took my crew there. They had arrived by that time, and we all learned about Calvados for the first time. We did some shots.
That can be a hard lesson sometimes.
Yes.
Did anybody have a hard lesson?
Nobody had a hard lesson. We sort of, kept it easy, just, one or two shots. And it was just a fun night. We got to meet a lot of new people from all over the place. And it was a great kickoff to my whole team being there and learning, getting that vibe of Normandy. On the 5th was Lafayette. We spent the majority of the day at this big, huge field at the Mer de Ray River, waiting for parachutes that never dropped. Finally, late in the afternoon, some did. And then that night, we were at the Normandy World War II Film Festival. It was a combined event with a Q&A of the Band of Brothers. And so we were there at the reception to begin with, where all the Band of Brothers were signing autographs and things like that. And then we went from there to the movie theater at the D-Day Experience. And I was really looking forward to this. And I thought it was going to be an amazing evening. It was definitely memorable, but it was not what I anticipated it to be. It was
disappointment.
It was disappointing. And I don't know that it was intentional. It's just the way things go. You can't plan a lot of things, but I think it started late. The evening started late, and the Q&A went for about 2 hours, and it was supposed to be 30 minutes. And then it was like 10:15, and the movie hadn't even started. So, when they took a break, they gave me my award, and then they were going to start the film, I basically said, it's 10:15 and this movie is an hour and a half. So if you're going to stay, that's great, but don't feel compelled. You certainly should go to the bathroom and get a drink. And then the majority of people left. So that was very hard, including all of the Normandy World War II Film Festival team and crew and the Band of Brothers. So that was kind of painful, and I was there till 1:30 in the morning. It wasn't what I was hoping for.
Big deception.
So that wasn't good. But the next day was D-Day. So it was, I'd never done this before, but I began the day on the beach at 6:30.
Wow.
Have you ever done that?
Not on D-Day.
It was so powerful, Michelle. I really think that you should try to do it. It was the most peaceful, the most beautiful, the most honoring time, I think, because it was at the time where the troops were landing, and it was the people that were there were so dedicated to just remembering that moment. And tons of reenactors were there with their Jeeps and costumes, and people were there to lay roses in the sea. And
was it an organized event? Or
no,
was it just,
everybody just comes on their own and does their stuff. I'm sure the reenactment groups do their own thing, and there were quote unquote ceremonies there. Some of the American military guys showed up to go for a swim in the morning sea. I thought that was so powerful, that they really wanted to connect with the men that were there that day. People wrote names of GIs in the sand, whether they had perished that day or whether they were veterans that had since died.
And that is a good point, because being there in the morning at that time, because I don't know what the statistics are, but of all those who didn't even make it, to the beach. And I know sometimes that there have been ceremonies or events organized where there's a commemoration to honor those that were lost at sea, that didn't even make it as far as the beach. And so I think that's also a good reminder. I know I think of them when I do go to the beach. Just think about all those men.
We were actually at the beach today and yesterday, and it was the first time that I've ever been there just to enjoy the beach. as a, I don't know, regular citizen, just enjoy going to the beach. People ask all the time, do you go to the beach at Utah Beach? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But I never go without thinking of the price that was paid for us to go there and enjoy the beach in peace.
I think of that every time I go.
Yeah.
So
it was beautiful. Yeah. So June 6th was a special day where we went to the beach in the morning, and then we went to the ceremony at the Dick Winters Monument. That's always my favorite.
Yeah.
Charles de Vallevielle brings roses from Brecourt Manor and gives them out to special people, and he gave me one. Gave me a rose, and I got to lay it at the foot of Dick Winters. And Bob Weber, who is in our film, was also there.
Oh, he was?
Yeah,
Bob was there?
he was there. It was great. And then all of our team was there. It was great to share that moment with them. So it was really our last day before the storm. It was like the calm before the storm of production that was just about to happen. And so it was a lovely day. And then we went to bed kind of late that night and got up early the next morning. And
you had your screening also.
Oh yeah, we did
in
Carentan, and that was still well attended, but just not a huge filled movie theater. And then that night we celebrated the Utah Beach Museum's 60th anniversary. So that was neat. That was Charles de Vallevielle is the mayor now, and he is the director of the Utah Beach Museum. And so we did a lot of remembering Michel de Vallevielle, his father.
Did they show like any video from early on?
They did. They had a 3-minute video, I think, of the entire how the museum came to be. So it was all in French, but I still got the idea. It was really neat to see how he had put it all together. So that was really great. And then the next morning, production began on the Carentan documentary that we are filming.
We started easy.
Yeah, we did start easy.
Sort of.
So why don't you talk about what we did that day?
So the first day, we just planned to do interviews. And at the Domain Airborne, where you stayed at Christmas with Carly and Anya, who have, I can't remember if you talked about Domain Airborne before, but they have a Dutch couple that came over and bought this old farmhouse, fixed it up, and has turned it into vacation rental and like a B&B. And so they were kind enough to let us start filming. So interview with Denis
Van Den Brink was our first interview.
Was the first one.
Yeah, it's a good way to break in, but it was a challenging day. Our challenges began very first thing on that day, and they did not stop. You would think that we've done this before. It's not going to be that difficult. Piece of cake.
As the French say, finger in the nose.
Is that what that means?
That's what
finger in the nose
means piece of cake. Like
are you
fingers
kidding?
in your nose. It's so easy. It's like your finger in your nose.
All French sayings crack me up. Okay, well, yes, we thought that was going to be a finger in the nose. But it was not. No. The challenges rolled in, and a lot of them were out of our control. Speaking of which, shortly after we started, there was a big, huge delivery of some sort of container.
Right.
That was beeping like crazy.
Yeah. And then, and of course I had to urgently leave, but.
Right.
So I missed Denis, and then you did Jean-Marie.
Yep.
And then we had learned that one of the reenactor groups couldn't make it and could only do one particular scene that we had planned for the following day. So we had to ditch the last 2 interviews, or we didn't have to ditch, we rescheduled the last 2 interviews so we could fit in a reenactment scene.
Yeah.
It was unexpected.
It was unexpected.
And fortunately, our 2 interviewers, Patrick Fissot and Olivier Jouard, were kind enough to come back and interview on Friday. And,
we had an amazing team that kind of started that day. Taylor Banowski was our producer. Mindy Cook was a cinematographer. Chad Gilchrist, cinematographer. We hired French crew, Francois Demerck and Emily, I forget Emily's last name, and then Tam's last name has escaped me.
I
It's a
don't think I
long
ever
one
knew
from
him.
Tahiti.
Uh-huh.
So we had 3 French crew members, and for the first
Right.
time, that was just
Right.
awesome. They
They
worked
were
out
incredible. They were very
fantastically.
professional and had great sense of humors and
Mhm.
personalities. And actually, so the only person from the crew that had ever worked with you before on a shoot was Rick.
Was Rick Arbazani. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was our UPM for the Girls
Daddy
for
Rick?
Freedom. And yeah, now he's known as Daddy Rick. He and I are the oldest ones of it. I do think he's older than me.
Yeah.
And it was so great to have him there,
Yeah.
to have him back. He was a great
He's
great
just
guy to have on
ready
set.
to do
Yeah.
anything and everything. So,
But you know, he said at our sort of wrap party
Uh-huh.
on the last night, he goes, you know what, I have worked on sets, you know, for the last 15, 20 years. No set have I ever worked on where everybody's gotten along this well.
Yeah.
And, you know, that things have gone this well, which is
Right.
ironic to say because we had so many difficulties,
Right.
and so many curveballs that we were thrown.
Right.
But what I did love about that is how everybody responded
Yeah.
to the curveballs and
Right.
how everybody handled themselves in the midst of that. And
Nobody freaked out or
Yeah.
panicked or
and I give a lot of
anything,
credit to our producer, Taylor
Yeah.
Banowski. She's got a cool head and she really works the problem,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And you know, everybody kind of did that.
Yeah, find solutions and go with it.
Yeah.
that's
So,
good.
and we're going to have Taylor and Chad and Rick. We're going to have everybody on this
Yeah.
podcast. So I kind of don't want to go into all
Right,
of the details. We did end up filming everything we came to film. Ironically, I
Right.
have no idea how that
Yeah.
happened.
The only
but-
thing we didn't get was the man in the street, but
Right.
we'll do that.
and I don't even know that
if it'll be necessary.
Yeah, if it'll
or
even
not.
be necessary.
Yeah.
So,
But everything essential to I think the
Yeah.
teaser that you want to do, you got.
Yep. I think we can certainly do the teaser that we will use then to try to raise money to finish. I will definitely need to come back. There
Yeah.
are things that we did not get this time that for the final film, I will need to have another probably 5 to 8 day shoot, I think.
And
So-
Taylor, Christian, you were saying the other day too that you liked the shorter
production
shoot.
days. Yeah. I mean, I
What
think
would-
we had I don't know, 16, 18, 19 days when we filmed in 2018.
yeah.
This was 4 days of shooting. It was
Yeah.
really compact. And I do feel like we were just all exhausted by the end of it. And it
Right.
really was nice to build it, you know, to be able to rest and to stop. So
Yeah.
I think that the stuff that we did so much pre-production in the beginning, and a lot of the things that mistakes I wanted to correct from the Girly War Freedom shoots, we corrected.
Yeah.
And I think it made it possible then when other things out of our control happened, we just weren't thrown completely off guard.
Right,
We were
yeah.
able to continue filming. And
Yeah.
so anyway, we'll have to talk about all of those things. So we did 2 days of interviews.
Right.
And then we did 2 days of reenactments. And the reenactment scenes, there's been, you know, postings on Facebook and stuff like that, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, just about some of the scenes we were doing, but they were beautiful.
Yeah. And and a shout out to the reenactor group.
They were called the
Klondikes?
French Klondikes, French
yeah.
Klondike group. They weren't supposed to be with us, but like for half a day. And because all these other reenactor groups canceled, the French Klondikes were with us for the entire 2 days.
Yeah.
Actually in 3 days, really, because they did the Jeep one in the beginning and then so
2 full days.
Yeah. And they were amazing. One of the things that does concern me, and we'll figure it out in the edit, is the fact that we had the same group of guys. And so were we able to film, you know, were we able to film it in a way?
Because Chad came up with, we'll let Chad talk about that more, but the idea that he came up with to kind of fill in, make it appear that there were lots of soldiers. So hopefully that will turn out well.
We will see how that works. So hopefully Chad was thinking on his feet and he was making lots of creative and intuitive decisions.
And another addition to the team was Marcio.
Oh man, Marcio Barrera. He is a photographer, videographer that works at Disneyland. And we hired him to be a behind the scenes photographer. And the plan about this was reenactors love to have photographs of their reenacting. And so the plan was that we would give the reenactors the photos. So we would hire Marcio to come and take the photos, and then Marcio would then give the photos to the reenactors. And that definitely worked. They loved Marcio being there, and
maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too much. And she is referring to a scene that happened, which I actually want to cover with Taylor when Taylor's here. But it was definitely had to do with Marcio, photos, Germans, reenactors, and what's allowed and not allowed in France. So more on that to come. But
just a little teaser for you for the next time.
Yeah. So, so anyway, that was Marcio was great to have on the team. And I didn't anticipate doing sound for those reenactment scenes because they're going to be MOS, but Francois and Emily, our sound crew, really wanted to be a part. And so they basically volunteered their time to go and get, the ambient sound of those things. So
I was wondering about that, and it'll be interesting to see if it can even be used or not. But,
we'll see. We'll have to ask Jason Hoban. Jason, you're gonna love it. I mean, you would have loved these guys.
Jason, you should have been there.
He would have eaten it up. But so now he'll have less work to do in the Foley area if he's able to use a lot of this sound stuff that we did. So that would be super cool.
So overall, a positive June 6th commemorations and film shoots.
Overall, I would absolutely say yes. Our team, we had an amazing time. I will say we had difficulty with our base camp and the place where we were living. It was a gîte run by French people who
don't like Americans.
And I mean, we do earn that reputation when we go abroad. Unfortunately, in France, we can be loud, we can be rude. Sometimes we can't pay our bills, and sometimes, or we don't pay our bills. And sometimes, people in France think that all Americans are like that.
Unfortunately, I think the stereotype kind of hit there, and they've had bad experiences, but it was unexcusable for their behavior as well too. I will say.
And it also changed once our French crew members showed up. All of a sudden they got really nice to us. So I don't know what that was about. But
so that was unfortunate, and another lesson learned.
Yes.
And we'll do it differently next time.
Yes, we will. But I was proud of our team, and I really am proud of the lessons we learned. And kind of what we have going forward. I can't wait for Bill Ebel to see our footage and see what we can kind of come up with. So one of the things we haven't touched on was craft service and catering. And you, my friend, knocked it out of the park with that. Michelle shows up. She was out of town. She went to Mexico. I don't know what she was thinking about going to Mexico during D-Day, but she was gone until June 6th. And so she shows up on our shoot with quiches, homemade quiches, and homemade chocolate chip cookies and sandwiches, and people were they could not believe it. Like they've never eaten that well on a set before. So kept us going.
The way through the heart is through the stomach, right?
Yes, apparently.
Got to keep people happy.
So thank you for that. That was huge service. Michelle has always been boots on the ground for us. And I was thinking, in some senses, you're a beautiful fixer in the film industry, where everything. If we say, can you get this or that, where it is, the people, how to make it happen. And you're just a wonderful asset for what we need to do. So thank you for everything that you did.
Thanks for having me on the project. I really enjoyed it. First time, this time, next time.
Well, I'm sure there will be more. I hope. Oh, by the way, that was so funny. Did you hear about the Italians? So,
oh no, but No, I thought, yes, I think I overheard you say something, but I thought it was Sam. I thought it was your American friend living in Poland who was putting together a project too.
Well, he is.
Right.
So we had at the Dick Winters Memorial, some guy comes up and introduces 3 Italians to me who run a museum in Italy, who are looking for a film crew to tell Italian stories because no one's telling World War II Italian stories. Yeah, I know. So
sign me up.
That's, I got to follow up. I got to follow up with that email. So yeah, there were Italian people that were asking us if we could do that. And then there was a group from Poland that was interested in having us come and tell their stories. So you just never know what's going to happen next. We'll do one at a time, but it's nice that people are respecting our filmmaking enough to say, hey, come tell these stories. There's some great stories there. So all in all, it was an amazing D-Day. And thank you so much, Michelle, for being here with me today. Everyone else is gone. Thank you for helping me kind of put together the week. We will go into more detail about the specific shoots, specific days, different people's roles, as they recover and are ready to get back on the podcast. So for the next week, I'm going to be staying here in Normandy, and we're going to be meeting with mayors and other officials, as well as past cast members for the Girl Who Wore Freedom, and just tying up a bunch of loose ends and figuring out when we can come back to do the pickup shoots and things like that. So, and maybe I'll get a little rest in here and there. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, everybody. You can watch the Girl Who Wore Freedom at thegirlwhoworefreedom.com. You please join us on Patreon for all extra bonus material. We've been taking so much extra footage of things, so we've got some great stuff for Patreon. And thank you so much for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell and you can be the one to tell it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.